face for reading. So I'm not sure what that means, but people have enjoyed watching me read in the past, people have enjoyed listening to me read, and I like doing it. So I figure I'll do it for you. I hope this is something you enjoy. If you have a request to make, please feel free. In the meantime, the first story I'd like to read, with her permission, is the fantastic A Long-Term Plot. Now this one is by Bee Mouse, and it is one of my favorites. It is Garrick-Bashir relationship. This one's set post-canon Cardassia. She has it tagged as moderately severe fluff. How long do people live in your family? They were sitting on the porch, him in a proper sitting position, and his housemate with his delicate human feet dangling down over the edge. A sloped, old-fashioned awning protected them from the hissing rain. He looked out into the garden that was standing valiantly against the million little blows, tilting his head slightly to show he'd heard the question and was just taking his time with the answer. The rain was severe, as if the weather had overheard, despite their best efforts, about the atmospheric scrubber skynets that had recently been finished and approved, and was spitefully determined to dump its poison all at once while it still had any power. He'd moved the tarps over the rows of edibles. The decorative plants would have to fend for themselves. Hopefully, tomorrow, the pale blue Osina trees would be grooved with acid scars, but everything under their canopy would be spared the worst of it. The outside of the house would be very clean, of course. Building facades on Cardassia were very clean and beautiful these days, at least those that remained standing, even as the rain left freckles and tracks on people's bodies. Does the weather invite such a question? It wasn't quite an answer, but his thread of thought had left him feeling contrary. Rain, renewal, appropriate for contemplating the life cycle and planning with forethought for the health of the individual's family, and by extension, the state, was the cheeky reply, quoted perfectly word for word. This made him smile down at his teacup. It did him good to be reminded how formidable his Julian could be when given a proper breadth of research material. He was right. It was time to consider the matter. Unlike the wide variation in ethnicity and various continental strains, factoring in diet, rank, enemies, the stability of a marriage, or other factors that could extend a Cardassian's life as easily as they could shorten it, modern humans had a rather consistent range. Augments, as usual, had to do things just a little bit better, to go further, flaunting, as one highly classified research report had put it, their disregard for the natural bell curve of decline. But even with all that accounted for, he knew he could only expect about 145 more years. Realistically, 130, with good health and a high chance of full mobility. 130 human years. 108 of his own. It will be enough. Considering how often in his genteel imprisonment he'd been afraid of dying a decrepit, toothless old man far from home, a prompt and graceful exit seems like a welcome alternative. Yes, such a pity. Scale deadening and rheumatism will have to do without him. We Garricks live dangerously, unfortunately. Mother was barely 170, but I can't imagine outliving her. He said it casually, but with certainty, as if he could no more control his limited years than pluck the fragile irises out of the downpour. He looked over, nearly choked on a laugh. Julian's face was so mournful. Oh, his mouth was firm, and he was trying. It might have served with another human, or someone who didn't know him so well, but his eyebrows kept creeping slightly together, and the line of his neck was dejection itself. Well, here was the disadvantage of that wider research base. He could no longer count on his friend's knowledge gaps to make these things convenient. Considering how long it had taken them to meet again, the continents, really, how stubborn of him, the continents Julian had crossed before coming to the old house with the irises, he must know more about Cardassian health and physiology than any human before. Starfleet had missed an enormous tactical advantage, and now they would never get him back. Certainly, he must have seen how in some remote agrarian provinces, even shorter-lived men could last well into their 200s. Turning back towards the garden, he gave his companion a moment to find his people's famous stiff upper lip. Right. Well, Julian started decisively, bright candles burn briefest and all that. Frankly, I won't last forever either. Give me a good 1:30, 1:35, and it's off to pasture for even esteemed state healer Bashir. It all works out pretty well, actually. His eyes turned sharp. Garrick maintained his most neutral, innocent face, out of principle. His only warning was Julian's teacup, set forcefully right next to his own before a hand cupped his cheek. And what else could he do but shut his eyes and press his nose into its warm palm? Clearly, his former protege had remembered the lessons on exploiting weakness, because now 2 strong brown arms were pinning his own down against his sides, and he was helpless, could do absolutely nothing, while Julian embraced him with a force that pressed them both into the support pillar, fingers fisting in the fabric of his thin summer shirt, all the better for Garrick to hear how his lovely voice had gone hoarse, whispering, "Did you think that would fool me for even a second? Honestly, what am I going to do with you?" And, "You hopeless, bloody romantic," in between hot, quick kisses just under his ear. And for once, he decided it would be better not to say something clever, and let his friend speak. Later, when Julian was asleep, and Garrick had spent some time at the mercy of every tender gesture in his arsenal, he noticed idly that the night that followed the evening was quiet and still, and that they had outlasted the rain. Thank you for listening. Sleep well.